Have you ever heard of a king so wise, so powerful, that his name became a synonym for genius itself? A man who built a legendary temple, judged with divine insight, and amassed a fortune that would make today's billionaires look like they're playing with pocket change. That king was Solomon, and his story is one of the most fascinating and, frankly, one of the most cautionary tales in history. But what if I told you that the wisest man who ever lived made a series of mistakes so catastrophic they unraveled his entire kingdom? What if the very source of his international power, his diplomatic marriages, became the poison that corrupted his legacy? Today, we're peeling back the layers of gold and glory to find the man behind the myth. This isn't just the story of King Solomon's wisdom. It's the story of how he lost it all. Let's set the stage. We're in the 10th century BCE. Solomon inherits the throne from his father, the warrior King David. Israel is at the peak of its power, a united kingdom at peace. But Solomon isn't a warrior like his dad. He's a scholar, a diplomat, a builder. One of the first things he does as king is something extraordinary. In a dream, God appears to him and says, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Now, what would you ask for? Riches, long life, the defeat of your enemies. Solomon asks for none of that. He asks for a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. This humility and focus on justice pleases God so much that he grants Solomon not only unparalleled wisdom, but also the riches and honor he didn't ask for. And this wisdom isn't just theoretical, it's put to the test almost immediately in one of the most famous legal cases of all time. You've probably heard of it, the story of the two women and the baby. Two mothers come before him, both claiming to be the mother of a single living infant after the other's baby had died. There are no witnesses. No DNA tests. It's one woman's word against another. How do you solve the unsolvable? This is where Solomon's genius shines. He calls for a sword and declares, "Cut the living child in two, and give half to one and half to the other." It's a shocking, brutal suggestion, but it's not an act of cruelty. It's a psychological masterstroke. The real mother, horrified, immediately cries out, "Please, my lord, give her the living baby. Don't kill him." The other woman, however, callously agrees. "Neither I nor you shall have him. Cut him in two." In that moment, the truth is laid bare. Solomon identifies the true mother by her love and compassion and returns the child to her. News of this judgment spread like wildfire, cementing his reputation as a ruler blessed with divine insights. His court became a center for learning and justice. With his wisdom secured, Solomon embarked on the project that would define his reign, building the first temple in Jerusalem. This wasn't just any building. It was to be the permanent home for the Ark of the Covenant, the dwelling place for God on earth. For 7 years, Solomon poured the nation's resources into its construction. He imported the finest cedar from Lebanon, overlaid vast surfaces with pure gold, and employed tens of thousands of laborers. The temple was an architectural marvel, a symbol of Israel's devotion and prosperity. It was the physical manifestation of a golden age. The nation was at peace, its borders secure, and its economy booming thanks to Solomon's savvy trade networks that stretched from Africa to Arabia. He was on top of the world. Kings and queens from distant lands, like the famous Queen of Sheba, traveled for months just to witness his wisdom and see the splendor of his kingdom for themselves. It seemed like nothing could go wrong. But here, at the absolute zenith of his power and prestige, the seeds of his downfall were being sown. To forge alliances and maintain peace with neighboring kingdoms, Solomon adopted a common diplomatic strategy of the time: political marriages. He married the daughters of pharaohs, kings, and chieftains. It was a smart move politically. These marriages created a web of treaties and mutual obligations that protected his kingdom without the need for constant warfare. But the Bible gives us a staggering number. Solomon had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. 1,000 women. Imagine the logistics, the politics, the sheer scale of that royal household. And this wasn't just about the numbers. The problem was who these women were. They came from nations that worshipped different gods: Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites. To accommodate his foreign wives and maintain good relations with their home countries, Solomon allowed them to continue practicing their own religions. This was, in a way, a policy of religious tolerance. But it went a step further. As Solomon grew older, the text tells us, his wives turned his heart after other gods. The man who had been granted wisdom directly from God, who had built the grand temple in Jerusalem, now found himself building shrines and high places for his wives' deities. He, the king of Israel, began to participate in their rituals. He built a place of worship for Chemosh, the god of Moab, and for Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites, right on a hill facing Jerusalem, in full view of the temple he himself had constructed. It's a shocking contradiction. How could the wisest man on earth make such a fundamental error? How could the man who prayed for a discerning heart now be unable to distinguish between his devotion to God and his affection for his wives? This is the great tragedy of Solomon's life. His strength became his weakness. The diplomatic genius that secured his kingdom's peace also introduced the very practices that God had forbidden. His love for his wives, or perhaps his desire to please them and maintain domestic tranquility, led him astray. The narrative suggests that his heart was no longer fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of his father David had been. He was trying to serve two masters, or rather 1,000 masters. He was spiritually compromised. The consequences were swift and severe. The divine favor that had defined his reign was withdrawn. God appeared to him again, not with a blessing this time, but with a judgment. Because Solomon had broken his covenant, the kingdom would be torn from him. However, out of respect for his father David, this wouldn't happen in Solomon's lifetime. But the division was inevitable. The Lord declared, "I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates." And even before his death, the cracks began to show. The peace that had characterized his long reign shattered. Adversaries rose up against him, both externally and internally. The united Golden Kingdom started to fray at the edges. Solomon, the great unifier and builder, was now presiding over the beginning of its end. His story serves as a powerful warning that wisdom without commitment is fragile, that political savvy without a moral compass can lead to disaster, and that even the greatest among us can fall when we allow our hearts to be divided. So, what are we to make of this? Was Solomon a wise man who made a few bad choices, or was his wisdom flawed from the start? Perhaps the lesson is that wisdom isn't a static possession. It's something that must be nurtured and protected every single day. Solomon's tale is a timeless reminder that no amount of wealth, power, or intellect can save us if we lose sight of what truly matters. His life began with a humble prayer for wisdom and ended as a monument to the folly of a divided heart, a truly cautionary tale for the ages. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the complex life of King Solomon. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the most compelling stories from history. Let me know in the comments what you think. Was Solomon a victim of his circumstances or the architect of his own downfall? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay curious.